My billionaire's father looked me in the eye on my wedding day and said, "If you marry him, you're no longer my daughter." I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. Before the reception ended, I lost my inheritance, my family, and every privilege I had ever known. All because I married a man my father called a nobody. For 6 months, my parents ignored every call and message. Then one evening, my father sat in the front row of a packed business conference. Confident. Respected. Certain he had been right. Then the announcer revealed the name of the keynote speaker. The room erupted into applause. My father looked toward the stage. And for the first time in my entire life, I watched him completely lose his composure. Because the man he called a failure was about to achieve something he never saw coming. And the truth was far bigger than anyone imagined. I grew up in a world where success was measured by numbers. Revenue. Stock prices. Acquisitions. My father, Richard Collins, was the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country. People admired him. Employees respected him. Business magazines featured him on their covers. To most people, he was a self-made success story. To me, he was simply Dad. Growing up, I never worried about money. But there was one lesson my father repeated constantly. Choose people who can help you build a future. At the time, I thought he was talking about character. Years later, I realized he meant status. Everything changed when I met Ethan. He wasn't wealthy. He didn't come from a powerful family. He didn't have impressive connections. What he did have was kindness, integrity, and a way of making me laugh even on my worst days. I fell in love with him quickly. My father did not. The moment he learned about Ethan's background, his attitude changed. Every family dinner became an interrogation. Every conversation turned into criticism. He insisted I was making a mistake. My mother rarely argued with him. Instead, she quietly supported whatever position he took. As our wedding day approached, the pressure intensified. Then, 3 weeks before the ceremony, my father called me into his office. He closed the door and looked directly at me. "You still have time to cancel this wedding." I shook my head. His expression hardened. "Then understand this," he said. "If you marry Ethan, you are choosing him over this family." The wedding day arrived. And standing before hundreds of guests, my father made good on that promise. My father left the reception before the first dance. My mother followed him. Several relatives quietly slipped out behind them. Within hours, the calls started. Some family members wanted explanations. Others simply wanted gossip. By the end of the week, it was obvious my father's message had spread. I was no longer welcome in the world I had grown up in. The trust fund was gone. The financial support disappeared. Even longtime family friends stopped reaching out. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to start over. Oddly enough, Ethan never seemed worried. While I spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, he stayed calm. Whenever I apologized for everything my family had done, he would smile. "We'll be okay," he always said. At first, I wasn't sure I believed him. We moved into a small apartment. Nothing about it was glamorous. The furniture didn't match. The kitchen was tiny. The walls were thin. But for the first time in years, I felt peaceful. There were no expectations. No constant judgment. No pressure to impress anyone. Just us. Ethan worked long hours. Sometimes he left before sunrise. Other days he returned home late at night. Whenever I asked about work, he kept his answers simple. "Things are going well." That was usually all he would say. I assumed he didn't want to burden me. Months passed. Slowly our life improved. Then one evening, Ethan walked through the apartment door holding an envelope. His expression was different. Excited. Almost stunned. I looked at him nervously. "What happened?" He handed me the envelope. Then he smiled. "I think everything is about to change." I opened the envelope expecting a job offer. Maybe a promotion. Instead, I found an invitation to an exclusive corporate leadership summit. The kind of event attended by CEOs, investors, and industry leaders. I stared at it. Then I looked at Ethan. "There has to be some mistake." He laughed. "There isn't." For the first time since we had met, Ethan looked nervous. Not worried. Just uncertain about how to explain something. We sat down at the kitchen table. Then he took a deep breath. "I should have told you this a long time ago." Immediately, my mind raced through 100 possibilities. But the truth wasn't what I expected. Ethan hadn't lied to me. He had simply never corrected anyone's assumptions, including my father's. You know how your dad always thought I was some entry-level employee? He asked. I nodded. Well, I never bothered arguing with him. That got my attention. Ethan explained that years before we met, he had helped build a technology company with several partners. The company grew quietly. Very quietly. Unlike my father, Ethan hated publicity. He avoided interviews, rarely attended public events, and preferred letting the work speak for itself. As the company expanded, so did his responsibilities. Eventually, he became one of its largest shareholders and a key executive leader. I sat there speechless. Not because of the success, but because none of it had changed him. He was still the same man who cooked dinner with me in our tiny apartment. Then he pointed at the invitation. The summit wants me to deliver the keynote address. I blinked. A keynote address. At one of the biggest business events of the year. Then Ethan smiled. And I'd like you to come with me. What I didn't know was that someone else would be attending too. Someone who was about to get the surprise of a lifetime. 2 weeks later, we arrived at the Leadership Summit. The event was being held in one of the largest convention centers in the city. Executives, investors, and business leaders filled the massive ballroom. Even from the entrance, I could feel the energy. Ethan, meanwhile, looked completely relaxed. As if speaking in front of thousands of people was perfectly normal. We were walking toward the main hall when I suddenly froze. Standing near the registration desk were my parents. My father was speaking with several executives. My mother stood beside him. Neither had noticed us yet. What are they doing here? I whispered. Ethan glanced over. Probably attending the summit. A few seconds later, my father looked up. The moment he saw us, confusion crossed his face. Then came the familiar expression of disapproval. He clearly assumed I was attending as Ethan's guest. What he didn't know was why Ethan had been invited. The ballroom lights dimmed. Guests began taking their seats. My parents sat only a few rows ahead of us. Then the host walked onto the stage. After welcoming everyone, he smiled and announced the keynote speaker. The room immediately erupted into applause. My father joined in politely. Then the host said Ethan's full name. My father's hands stopped moving. My mother slowly turned around. The entire audience rose to their feet. I watched my parents stare in disbelief as Ethan walked onto the stage. A giant screen behind him displayed his achievements, companies, and industry awards. The same man my father had dismissed for years was being introduced as one of the most respected leaders in the industry. And judging by the look on my father's face, he had absolutely no idea. After Ethan finished speaking, the ballroom remained on its feet. The applause seemed endless. Executives lined up to shake his hand. Investors wanted photographs. Industry leaders praised his work. I glanced toward my parents. Neither looked the same. The confidence my father carried for most of his life had disappeared. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Later that evening, as guests mingled during the reception, my father approached us. Slowly, carefully, almost as if he didn't know what to say. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he looked at Ethan. I owe you an apology. The words seemed difficult for him. Ethan simply nodded. My father turned toward me. Then came something I never expected. I was wrong. Not about business. Not about success. About people. The room suddenly felt very quiet. For years, my father had judged worth through titles, wealth, and reputation. He had assumed character followed status. Ethan had proven the opposite. The man my father dismissed had shown more patience, loyalty, and integrity than anyone else in the situation. My mother wiped away tears. My father apologized for cutting me off after the wedding. For making me choose between love and family. For believing success could be measured by a bank account. I listened. Then I smiled. Because the truth was, I no longer needed his approval. I had built a life I loved. A marriage built on respect. And a future I was proud of. As Ethan slipped his hand into mine, I realized something important. Money can open doors. Power can create opportunities. But character is what determines who walks through them. And 6 months after losing everything, I finally understood how rich I truly was. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share. Then tell me in the comments. Would you choose family wealth or true love if you had to choose?